Hi, everybody. As Buzz said, my name's Bob Simpson. I'm the president and CEO of the Multifamily Impact Council. One of the great things when you start your own organization is you can give yourself whatever title you want. And I've always wanted to be a CEO. It's a lot more work than I thought. I'm also the chief IT guy as well, and head of HR. And depending on where I work, the janitor. It's really nice to talk to you all today. And what I want to do is, first, why does impact matter in the multifamily world, right? I mean, you hear about impact investing all around. It's in the commercial real estate sector. You see ESG. Everyone says impact. I don't really know what it means all the time. But in the multifamily space, it's really about asking 5 key questions, right? If you're an investor, if you're a lender, if you own a building, if you're a service provider, the 5 questions you just have to ask yourself at the end of every day are, number 1, does this investment improve the life of the person who lives in the property that I own, finance, provide services to? The second is, does the investment help improve our ability to address climate change or prepare the building and its residents to be more resilient in the face of climate change? That's the second. The third is, am I investing with partners who are committed to good business principles? Are they transparent? Are they ethical? Do they have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion that goes beyond just a commitment and really into tangible, intentional action? The fourth question you have to ask yourself is, when I engage with this, am I meeting my fiduciary responsibility to my investors, right? Am I making money? And am I ensuring that the pension fund that I represent, the investors that I represent, are getting what we promised that they would get, right? The fifth is, are we aligned with global ESG certifications so that we can ensure that other areas of global capital that haven't come into this market yet can come in knowing that there's a common set of frameworks and that we can prove that what we say we are going to do, we are actually doing. That's what an impact framework is. Assuming I should have figured out where the clicker was before I started. That's what impact investing is. That's why it's important in the multifamily industry, because when you think about it, you will spend more time in your life in the place that you live than any other place on earth, right? And so there's no better place for impact than where you live. And for millions and millions of low and moderate income households, that's the place they rent. So impact investing, we've heard a lot about it. It's a huge field. Basically, impact investments do this, right? Tangible social good, meet a targeted rate of return aligned with ESG principles. While impact investing aligns with ESG principles, it's important not to get it confused with ESG. They're not the same, right? ESG principles are a much broader circle. Impact investments are much smaller. ESG investments in the past have very much focused on reducing risk. Impact investments are focused on producing a tangible social environmental good, right? The way I look at it is impact investing is do more good. ESG investing is let's not do no harm, right? Currently, over 1/3 of all assets under professional management today in the United States are complying with some form of ESG requirement, right? That's about $17.1 trillion. That is not all impact investing, right? We're a small part of that. The goal that we have and the opportunity that we have is there are more impact-motivated investors, not just in the United States, but also around the world, that want to know whether or not their dollar is doing more than just getting the rate of return, which is important, but also having a social good is growing. And the goal of the council is to ensure that we can help ensure that a portion of those funds can get redirected into affordable rental housing in the United States, whether or not it comes from the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, a pension fund in North Dakota, or a high net worth individual who is looking to deploy their money in a different way, right? Or a tax credit investor, right? Multifamily framework. One of the challenges to being able to bring that flow of capital into the affordable rental housing world is, as Buzz said, there's really no standard. There's no framework. I don't know how many people are here today, but I guarantee you if we asked everyone to define what impact meant in the multifamily space, it would all be different. It is right now, when you look at impact reporting, it's the Wild West, right? So whatever you're doing, that's it, right? There's no benchmarking. It's really hard for the most part. So in order to ensure that people can come in and invest more money into this space, we felt it was very important to build a framework of impact investing principles and reporting guidelines for the industry so that we can increase the flow of private global capital into this sector. So we created a Multifamily Impact Council. We exist for the good of the industry. It was established about 6 months ago. We're made up right now of 35 members from across the gamut, from lenders, investors, owners, and service providers, many of whom are in the room today. I know Lyft's here, NEF's here, KeyBank's here. NAAHL obviously is a founding member. If I've forgotten anyone, I'm sorry, but thank you all. So that's the goal, right, is to create this framework. And we want to grow, right? So this isn't just a closed group of 35 members. We want to continue to grow and be as transparent as possible. We have a couple key areas that guide our framework. One is we want to be very intentional about what is impact, and we want to be able to encourage intentional actions. We want to make sure that we're specific so that we're not talking about like grand themes. We're saying like, here are actual things that you need to do. We want to make sure that we're aspirational, so that say, look, here's where we're starting. We recognize we want to be someplace better in 10 years, and here's how we're going to get there. And then we have to be transparent to the market and to our investors about what we are doing. So this is what we started with. This is our framework. This is like the really high level stuff. And what we're saying is like a multifamily impact framework begins with these 7 key principles. Right? Affordability, which is the foundation of impact, housing stability, community engagement, financial fitness, physical and mental health, climate change, good governance, right? How am I improving the life of the person who lives there? How am I supporting the environment? How am I making sure that the way I run my business and the way my partner runs their business are in accordance with good governance principles? Those are the key principles. Since we started, we've been working with our research and impact analytics partner group called Global Impact to build out these principles into a framework, interviewing all of our founding members, many of whom a number of times. We're developing an evidence base to ensure that each one of these principles is backed by solid research. And we're starting to build out a framework that basically will help you, as you're an investor or a lender, ask some pretty key questions, right? So we start with the principle, say it's affordability. We establish a definition, right, which is along a spectrum of impact. Then we take that definition, we say these are the thresholds that you have to meet in order to be classified as impactful in this principle, right? And then once you get that threshold, then you want to make sure that these are the actions that I'm going to take. Be specific about the actions that you're going to take to get there. Make sure that it's backed by the evidence, and we're getting the evidence. Once you do that, you want to make sure that here's how I'm going to report on it. Here are the tangible, quantifiable measures of impact from a social perspective and a financial perspective. Here's how it aligns to the rest of the industry, and I'm committing to be transparent about this information to my investors on an annual basis, right? So one of the questions we keep getting is, as we want people to sign up for these principles and agree to incorporate them into the way they do business, really the best way to ensure that everyone is staying committed isn't to say, do this or you're out. It's to say, be transparent about what you're doing, right? And if you are not doing something and the principal says that you should, tell us why, and then tell us what's your plan to do it, right? And then hold yourself accountable to getting there, right? The market changes. Sometimes things that you think you can do today, you can't do 5 years from now. We understand that, but tell us. Right now, we're in the process of pulling together the initial findings. We will be having feedback sessions on each principle. So when I walk through all the different areas within each principle, every single one of them we're putting into a large framework document that we're going to be walking through with our members and our advisory board in December and January. We're going to be coming out with 2 public pieces of information in Q1 of next year. The first is going to be a research findings report. It's going to read more like a white paper. Hopefully it'll be read more than a white paper. And we'll also have a signatory document, right? So a statement of principles to say, this is the threshold of impact that we are committing to. And then over the course of the next year, we'll be incorporating our members' signatures into that so that they're going to agree. It'll be a non-binding commitment, but you'll know if they're not, to say, we agree with these principles, and we're going to incorporate these into our due diligence. We're going to incorporate these into our business practices. We're going to incorporate these into how we manage our properties and do our business, right? And it's a promise to do that. And then the question then is, the investors will say, well, you promised to do this. How are you doing? That's where the transparency comes into play, right? That's where we're at today. Some of the takeaways. So we've had a lot of conversations with members, other experts across the industry. And, really, if you think about it, building a framework is how you go about doing this is not rocket science, right? It's really asking, where are you at today in your impact journey, right? There's a lot of things that folks in this room that are doing today in your average everyday business that have tremendous levels of impact for the folks who live in your property. You should capture that, right? Don't diminish the fact that what you are doing today is already amazing, right? Start there, right? Start with where you are today. Ask yourself where you want to be in the future, right? What actions are you going to take to get there, right? List it. And then how do you prove you're going to be going down that road? Right? Be transparent on an annual basis, on a biannual basis to make sure you know. And that you can be reporting that out to your investors as well so that they know. What will happen is once you start doing that, other investors who have not come into the space, who are looking to come into the space, will be able to say, this is what I consider to be impact. This is how I want to look at my investments. These guys are meeting this standard. I like it. Let's go. That's the goal. What we're finding, first of all, what we're finding is this is a really big job, much bigger than I anticipated, right? Affordable housing is filled with rabbit holes, and I think we have every single one of them in our framework. So it's really important for us to understand, one, is the first version that we get is going to be version 1. This is not going to be this is the first version. It'll be imperfect. We really are hoping to establish a floor of what impact is and be able to grow from there. So understanding that's important. The definitions are important. Definitions aren't going to be binary, right? It's not like something is affordable and something's not affordable. There is a threshold level of affordability. I think right now we're kind of looking at the CRA definition, right? That is, from an affordability perspective, if you think of it being a spectrum of impact, affordability from a CRA definition is here. Property where no one's paying more than 30% of their income for rent is here. And along that spectrum, there's different levels of affordability, and it's just being able to define it so that you can say, as an investor or a lender, you want to know a couple key questions about affordability. How affordable is it? How many units are affordable? How long are those units affordable? Are they deed restricted or not? Like, what are the conditions that govern their affordability? Where are they located? And do you take housing choice vouchers, right? Those are pretty simple questions we already know the answers to as owners and lenders. We should all be incorporating that into our due diligence and our impact investing reports. That's one of the ways we're going to look at impact for every principal, right? You define it, and then you set some threshold questions that you have to answer, right? And if the answer is no, let's say, no, I don't accept housing choice vouchers at all my properties. Why? What's my plan to get there, right? And if you're disclosing that and you're being transparent to your investors and you say, here's why I don't plan to get there, investors can then, they'll make that decision, right? They'll be able to look at another investment that maybe is, right? And hopefully they will still have the choice to do so. Ask that question. Recording requirements, they have to be feasible. There's a lot of reporting that we wish we had that we just can't get today because asset management systems don't incorporate it, right? We aren't asking all the right questions because we always don't know the right questions to ask. It also costs money to make those changes in the systems. It also requires training so that your asset and property managers are hitting the right drop-down box, right? All of these things are really, really important. These are things that we learned the hard way when we were building out the green finance program at Fannie Mae, right? The important part is making sure that you can actually track the data. So we want to start with a layer that's, we call it asset manager friendly. Start what you can capture today, and then start thinking about, well, here's the additional information that we need. Make sure that the information that we think we need is backed by research. Make sure that it's feasible, and then work with partners who have the ability to roll it out. Accountability. I've said this before, it has to come from transparency. We're not a certification organization. We don't audit. We're not asking that people, sign reps and warrants. What we're saying is that, you are agreeing to incorporate this principle into your business. Be transparent about it. There will be times when you cannot meet a principle. That happens. Hopefully it will never happen with affordability, but there's other areas that market conditions change. Be transparent about it for that year. Say what happened, move on, and set a course to not do that again. And then what we found is that there are specific questions, as I talked about, that you can build into your due diligence and underwriting practice. So the practical application of this, if you think about an impact framework, right? One, it governs your broad strategy around how do you build impact, right? So this is how I'm thinking about impact. The second thing is you build it into your due diligence process. So as you're evaluating deals, as you're looking at investors into your fund, this is what you build into your due diligence. This is what you put into your operating agreements. This is what you put into your upper tier documents, right? That you're asking these questions so that when you're going back out to the market to your investors and asking them to put money into your fund, you can say, we are an impact fund because we agree with these principles and this is how we put it into our business, right? We are asking in our due diligence if our operators are, what their property condition report is, right? Do they have clearly spelled out lead-based paint, asbestos mitigation? Are they requiring pest control and remediation, right? Everyone laughs when I say pest control and remediation, but it is the evidence is pretty clear that if you have pest control and remediation policies in your building, indoor air quality goes up and rates of childhood asthma go down, right? It's not a completely causal relationship. More likely than not, that's going to happen. So you should ask that question. And we should be asking people to do that, right? So questions like that you can build into your due diligence, you can build into your operating agreements, and as an owner-operator, you can build it into your business practices, right? So that's the practical application, and this is what we're learning. It's a big process. I grossly underestimated the time and work that it would take to get there. We did bring on 2 new research associates to help us get to the next level. We've had tremendous support and help from our founding members who coming up in November and December will be asked to do even more. And obviously we are putting together an advisory board that we're going to announce in November in about a week and a half. And our membership continues to grow. And the big thing about our membership is we asked our members to be as active and engaged as they want to be. but there's always room for them to be part of the process. So when people come on, what we do is you're a part of the next iteration, right? Founding members helped us vet the first stage. As we go forward, we're going to have a rolling feedback loop process. This is going to be always in the process of some form of enhancement, and that way we can continue to get feedback and best practices from the industry as we move forward. That's what we do. We're very focused on just that. We do three things at the Multifamily Impact Council. We build and we manage and maintain the impact framework that we're in the process of doing. We build relationships and partnerships. So a sizable number of our advisory board members represent the large global ESG certification organizations like PRI, like GRESB. We have a very good working partnership with NAAHL and PRIA to make sure that we are aligned with the work that they are doing and that they can incorporate all or portions of our framework into their work. And the third is we establish a platform to share information, best practices, research, to ensure that folks can help grow this industry, right? And we can share what we're learning to anyone who wants to know about it. This is a growing field. We're all still learning. Everything that we build today will be different in 5 years. We understand that. And we want to make sure that we can help build this industry and help develop impact investing into a credible independent asset class going forward. So with that, any questions? Yes.
I have got two strong notes there. How do you interact with Iris Plus?
Yeah, so good question. Sorry. How do you interact with Iris and Iris Plus? So we have a good relationship with the folks at the Global Impact Investing Network, and we have been talking with them quite a bit over the last couple of months. Lissa Glasgow is on our advisory board, who's with the GIN Iris group. And so Iris has done some really interesting work around impact investing in affordable housing as it relates to purely capital A affordable. And so we're really hoping to help inform their work around the broader spectrum of affordability. But they will have a representative on our advisory board. We want to make sure that they're going to be part of the feedback and vetting process as well. One of the things that we also did when we started the research process is we made sure that our methodology was aligned with GIN, Iris, PRI, GRESB, right? We don't want to do anything they do.
It looks a lot similar.
Yeah. Well, what they've said to us and what we've heard is that a lot of folks are very commercial. So there's a lot of impact frameworks around broader commercial real estate. But the more we go forward, the more there needs to be specificity around each asset class, right? So that you're not looking at shopping malls, data centers, commercial retail, and commercial residential all the same. And so our goal is to help them kind of build out the specificity around commercial residential. Anyone else? No.
The goal of your investors for doing this? I mean, they're probably paying some sort of membership dues. Is the idea that by voluntarily adopting this framework, they're averting it being forced on them later on? Is it that they are thinking that they'll qualify for more ESG investment because these align? But then I would think that some of those certifications you mentioned do that. Yeah. What's their interest in doing this?
Yeah, so there's those three and a couple more, right? So I mean, the first is they want to make sure that one is they want to make sure that it's defined in a way that is realistic, but also credible enough in the market so we don't see what happened in the greenwashing space, right? So that's number one. Number two is they do see this coming down to something that'll be mandatory going forward. And so they would much rather make sure that there's something to base it off of rather than something just being enforced upon them. The third is there is a legitimate belief that as more money comes in, the only way to keep more money coming in is to have some standards that investors who don't know as much about multifamily or are new to the space can all agree around. So being able to increase capital. I think the fourth issue is folks will come in and they'll say, we feel like we're doing a really good job, but we don't want someone else to come in and lower the bar, right? So let's set a bar so that everyone else has to meet the same bar we're meeting. I think there's that. Other folks, I think, are legitimately just think there's a need for standards, right, and want to do that. And then there's all of our members have talked about the need to use the standards as a way to build some consistency in how we report and measure impact, right? So that not everyone is measuring it a different way, and that we can develop some sort of industry benchmark so that you can know how you're doing, right? I mean, theoretically, if we have an impact council benchmark, you want to be at least as good as everyone else, right? Because everyone's going to be pretty good, right? But it allows you to kind of understand where you are, and that is very informative for you internally. It doesn't have to get shared, but it allows you to say, hey, here's where I think we can improve, or hey, we're at the industry standard, and we're okay there, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm going to make the time limit. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Wait for the mic.
So is your intention that owners will be able to self-certify or at least peg themselves along that continuum?
Yes. Yeah. I think what we want to be able to do is give owners a tool that shows them, that when they say, hey, we want to commit to these principles, then to be able to give them the tool to help them build that into their business. And then they can say, look, here's, I'm going to be on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm a 6 on impact. I'm a 10 on green, a 7 on housing stability, right? Not that simple, but that's the way we kind of envision it. One more? No more? Awesome. Thank you guys very much.